What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So today I'm going to be reviewing Election, which is a film that came out in 1999 that stars both Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. So Election is yet again another page request from Tyree. Here he is again requesting something timely. Last month in October he requested a horror film, The Others. So if you haven't checked that review out, please do. And this month, considering we just had the shit show dumpster fire of an Election, here I am reviewing Election. I was really excited to watch and review this movie because Election is a film that I actually feel a little bit nostalgic for. Not because I watched it growing up, but this is the film that I saw the DVD cover of a lot growing up because I would go to Blockbuster all the time. And I swear, every single time I went to Blockbuster, I would come across the Election DVD cover. The DVD cover is incredibly memorable. I mean, it's hard not to have this graphic design image imprinted into your psyche. But like I said, I never really watched it. I would just always walk past it. So I think it's really awesome that like 20 something years later, I'm now here finally watching it and talking about it with you guys. But anyways, Election is a movie that's written and directed by Alexander Payne. And the films that I've seen from Alexander Payne so far are Nebraska and The Holdovers. Nebraska, really good movie. The Holdovers, also really good movie. I'm not super in love with them, but I can tell that in terms of screenwriting and acting, they're both really, really incredible. And after watching Election, this is by far his best work that I've seen so far. Just in my opinion, this movie exceeded my expectations, and I just thought was brilliant pretty much all the way through. So conceptually speaking, what this movie is basically examining and exploring a high school election and satirizing the political process of it all and kind of drawing similarities to how the process would be in like actual local political elections and even like the presidential election. While at the same time presenting everything with such stylistic comedic energy, and then also giving us characters that are so rich in their own way, despite them being very unlikable. But another thing that this movie includes that I thought was really admirable was bold R-rated comedy. Like, I know that this is a high school comedy, and, you know, some people expect high school comedies to be this way, but there's a lot more, like, adult humor in this movie than I expected. And it's very, like, unforgiving about it. And I really love that about it. And maybe that is, you know, beyond the fact that, again, I don't feel like a lot of these characters are the most likable. I feel like that R-rated comedy might have been a reason why at the time it wasn't really a box office success, thus making it not really the most marketable film in the world. But the merit of this film speaks for itself. Like I said, this movie has a comedic energy to it that has such personality behind the camera. And it's so consistent throughout the experience. For instance, this movie is narrated by 4 different characters, and just depending on the scene and the context is devoted to a certain character narrating their perspective of the situation. And there's also a handful of editing choices in this movie that are strictly and stylistically comedic. Whether it's using the dissolve technique where you take an image and overlay it over another image, or whether it's just straight up cropping somebody's face over somebody else's face during a sex scene. I mean, it's just glorious. But I also love how it blends a lot of different forms of comedy together, because there's a lot of this movie that I think is more subtle humor that is there just because it's like clever in its own little quiet way. And then you have the more outwardly brainy type of humor that's again meant to satirize the political process. Then you also just have really goofy and dumb humor mixed in with some slapstick. And then you have like just some of that R-rated sex humor type of stuff. Honestly, like again, this movie kind of has everything screenplay wise. But the cast of characters and the performances themselves are also a huge reason why this film works so well and is so enjoyable and rewatchable. Again, like I think the casting director did a perfect job with everybody, starting with Reese Witherspoon, which is so good in this movie. She is perfect in this role. She is, yeah, I mean, a lot of people could watch this and think, oh my God, her character is so unbearably annoying, but it's very intentional in that way. And I just think she's so funny in this movie and gives an excellent performance. She's basically that like pitch perfect, like squeaky clean political candidate that was kind of born and raised for this moment. You know, the candidate that everybody kind of expects to win. And Matthew Broderick's character is basically the evil political advisor that is doing everything he can to make sure that Reese Witherspoon's character does not win the election. And he really hates her character for such petty and unfair reasons. I mean, one of the biggest reasons he doesn't like her in this movie is because she basically had a scandal with one of his best friends who is a grown-ass man. They basically were sleeping together and had a relationship, and he fell in love with her. And there's this whole angle to the film where he basically resents her for what she did to his grown-ass man friend. In the movie, he narrates that he doesn't blame her for what happened because of the age gap and power dynamics. But obviously, when you watch the movie, you can't help but think that that is still like a huge driving factor as to why he did what he did. But also, I think he just can't stand like the persona and the image that she's upholding, because she's upholding this very goody two-shoes, academic, hardworking image. But of course, since he knows some of her dirty laundry that nobody else knows, he just can't help but just resent that squeaky clean image. But yeah, also Matthew Broderick is perfectly casted in this movie. I know that a lot of people hate on him, and rightfully so. I think for the most part, he's a pretty bland and whatever actor. And also for that crazy like manslaughter shit he did forever ago. But I think specifically for this movie, he's perfectly cast because I think it's intentional for him to have this kind of bland white teacher image. But I think one of the goals of this movie is to expose his character to the audience as a huge hypocrite, because as I mentioned, he really despises Reese Witherspoon's character because I think he finds her image to be a complete facade. But you could say the exact same thing for him. And there's this really funny and brilliant scene in the movie where his character is scolding and lecturing Reese Witherspoon's character, and he says this.
Now, I think the lesson here is that old or young, we all make mistakes. And we have to learn that our actions, all of them, can carry serious consequences.
And I just really love that piece of writing, because not only is it just one of the more basic themes of the movie, but he is being incredibly hypocritical, lecturing her and saying that specific thing to her, considering what he's already done in the movie up until this point, and especially what he does at the end of the movie, which that line itself kind of foreshadows to. There's also another great scene in this movie where he gets stung by a hornet or a yellow jacket on his left eye, and it really swells up bad. And considering the immoral things that he was doing or trying to do in that moment, I think it kind of serves as a perfect symbolic reflection of the two sides of his character. Again, one side representing the more squeaky clean image, and the other one representing the more darker and the more hidden stuff within him, but is outwardly being broadcasted because of the bee sting. I might be reading way too much into it, but that's just personally what I got out of it. But the other characters in this movie are also well written and really funny as well. You have the other candidate running in this movie named Paul, which is basically like Matthew Broderick's little puppet. He's like the dumb football player, popular kid, but he has a chance to win because he's very popular. And he's honestly like probably one of the more likable characters in this movie, besides Tammy, which I'll get to in a second. But his just worst sin is just being really dumb. But he's also very like positive and doesn't hold any ill will against anybody. So it's kind of hard to hate him. His character also felt very Keanu Reeves-esque, and it's almost like they couldn't afford to get another A-list actor into the film's cast. So they were just like, let's get this guy. But he did a great job. So as I mentioned, we also have Tammy, who plays the other candidate and character in this movie, played by Jessica Campbell, who, by the way, she died apparently 4 years ago at the age of 38, which is really tragic. Rest in peace. I loved her character in this movie. She basically plays the anti-establishment candidate. The candidate that is just, fuck the system, doesn't really give a shit, just wants to see chaos reign. And there's a brilliant scene in this movie, arguably one of the best scenes in the movie, where, she gives her speech to all the kids that are at the high school as to why they should vote for her. And it is a brilliant monologue, so hilarious, so well written.
The only promise I will make is that if elected, I will immediately dismantle the student government so that none of us will ever have to sit through one of these stupid assemblies again.
And again, kind of showcases how the anti-establishment character always gets a lot of enthusiasm. You had it there with Bernie Sanders, a lot of enthusiasm. Look, you had it with Trump. Trump isn't actually anti-establishment, but that's what he markets himself as, and apparently that's all it takes. But it's kind of crazy how you see a political candidate, even on a high school level, portrayed in a film in 1999, embody that anti-establishment rhetoric and see how much it does resonate. And then you see that reflection happening even in society today. And also, this movie has a phenomenal ending. I love the last scene in this movie. It ends with something having to do with Matthew Broderick character, and it's a direct callback to one of the earliest scenes in the movie, and it is just a mwah. It's a chef's kiss way to just end the whole movie. Yeah, I don't know. I just really love this movie. I think it's a phenomenally written comedy. Screenplay's so good. It's got some stylistic personality and direction behind it. Performances across the board are fantastic. I don't really have much of anything to really criticize about it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a masterpiece either. So I'm going to give Election a soft to solid 9 out of 10. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a little unfairly reserved and I'm trying to like gatekeep my 10 out of 10s right now. Election is actually surprisingly in the Criterion Collection as well, so I definitely want to buy this. And also, while I'm on the topic, I might as well just apologize and address the elephant in the room that I haven't been making any Criterion Hall content this month. I apologize. It's as simple as the fact that I don't have any money to spend on Criterions. I'm scraping by here. The only reason why I'm able to watch recent movies and review them is because I have AMC A-List. If I didn't have that, I couldn't even do that either. So I deeply apologize for not being able to have Criterion content this month. I know that it sucks, but just know that it also sucks for me. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you really enjoyed everything I had to say about Election, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.